The SACP is facing its own ANC moment, it would seem, as its staff members have gone reportedly unpaid for months. The issue apparently came up for discussion at the party's Central Committee meeting, which was held at the weekend. Now, if media reports are true, this could embarrass the SACP, whose political slogan is a promise to protect South Africa's poor majority. A number of its leaders, on the other hand, live on massive government salaries and benefits. Joining us now to reflect on this and other key outcomes of the weekend meeting is the SACP's first Deputy Secretary, Soli Mapaila. Mr. Mapaila, thank you very much for your time. Let's confirm for the record if indeed the SACP has been struggling to pay salaries, and if so, for how long?
Firstly, Toli, let's congratulate Black Coffee for his winning of the Grammy Award. It's a great inspiration for us all in Africa, and I think I appreciate that and his message to the youth of our continent that they can still aim high in their own respective categories and be the best amongst the world. Coming to your question, yes, it's true that we have struggled at some point to pay salaries, but it's not at the rate that was reported in the media, particularly in the newspaper. We were the first to acknowledge as early as 2020 that we're being beaten badly by COVID-19 because, as you know, majority of our members are unemployed, and we receive most of our income from the donations from our members. When COVID-19 hit us bad and workers were not at work, they were unable to make those contributions, which will then be able to share to all our employed staff, including myself. What I can say to you, Toli, is that what our staff members don't have, no one in the leadership collective that is full-time has. Those of us who are full-time, who receive money from these donations by the workers that support the operations of the Communist Party. Whatever we have, we share together. We are owed, myself for instance, almost 6 months of salaries, not 6 months in a row without being paid, but I'm owed 6 months of salaries. It's not the first time. Previously there will be this kind of issues. Even when Comrade Blade was working in the Communist Party, we were together in that space. We would go for some months without being paid. So it's not something that for the political staff, but for the category of low-paying staff, that's where we're deeply concerned now. But we have always made sure that they get paid if we miss a particular month, but we'll always make sure that we come back and repay them. We acknowledge the section that we owe them. We must also indicate that it has not been a wholesale no payment. We will not sometimes pay the cash component, but make sure that important contributions that are required for their provident fund, for their medical aid, those have always been up to date. Of course, the cash component it's important because it's the one that workers will use to eke out their living. We have also contributed immensely as the party taking responsibility to communicate with their respective banks and institutions that they owe, to make sure that we take that responsibility, and when the situation improves, we'll be able to honor our own obligations. We do not run away from these obligations, and they know that. We have also had extensive discussions with them, but we have no particularly capitalist sponsors that are willing to support us. So they know about that. We discuss that all the time about the sources of money for the Communist Party. For those that are not in the employ of the Communist Party, who are members or even leaders of the Communist Party, who may have received salaries because of where they work, whether it would be in government or in the trade union sector and so forth, they also have done their bit. All our what you call deployed cadres or cadres who are in areas where they are permanently employed, they have also participated in a special contribution to make sure that they improve or increase their current contribution to make sure that those who are full-time in the Communist Party are able to receive the money. But of course, given that the continued rate of this crisis and economic crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, and the continued economic crisis, with workers not fully back to their jobs, and unemployment rising above 50% at expanded level, it has really impacted us badly.
Yeah.
But
All right.
we do owe them salaries. We will be able to sort that out.
Interesting to note that you're mentioning a special contribution by those of your leaders who may be employed in government and getting or drawing salaries there. Just a point of clarity, when you say they made a special contribution, does that mean that they don't generally contribute in monetary terms to the party, and it is in this instance of financial difficulty that they've had to make the special contribution?
No, they made a special contribution on top of their monthly contribution. All members of the party who are workers are required to contribute something to the Communist Party. They've been doing that, and they continue to do that. But this time, given our situation, we had to meet with them to make a plea to alert them of our situation. And of course, they then responded by making a special contribution, which we appreciate. We also, as you know, launched a crowdfunding initiative, which is in its early stages, to try and see, to explore many other methods of fundraising in this regard. So for that matter, we are quite happy that all of them have been participating in this particular space. They didn't necessarily say that because they are working, they can leave those who are not earning their salaries to live in misery.
All right. Let's then try and turn the conversation slightly away from the salary issue and focus the attention on the country in general. You have raised the issue at your weekend meeting about the continuation, what you would like to see continue, perhaps I should put it, the 350 Rand social relief of distress grant. And you are calling for that because of the worsening financial situation. Some people fearing that this actually has gotten even worse, the socio-economic conditions in the country, and they are worried to such an extent that they're saying if the July unrest was anything to forewarn us about what the future may look like, we might see something much worse than that. Is that a view you carry as the SACP?
Firstly, is that we call on government to make sure that they support what we call productive forces, that is the building of industries, the factories, and particularly the state-owned enterprises, to support them to have the ability to create jobs, to roll out massive infrastructure programs that will also create jobs. In that particular space, we also have felt that government cannot sit on its laurels looking at this crisis and only reporting about it. But the policies that the government employs, the neoliberal economic policies and the austerity measures are measures imposed by the international institutions, including the rating agencies, for government not to cut their social spending in communities, whether it's in health, in education, and other services, security, and so forth, because those are regarded as social issues, and these social issues are not profitable. So they don't want government to contribute enough into that particular space. That is why we also see a lot of unemployment. So we want government to contribute in that, disregard these teachings by the World Bank, the IMF, and the OECD countries and the rating agencies, and focus on the needs of the people, distribute resources in areas where there's a more need, and not necessarily say because this is a social area they can't contribute. And also disregard this thing that the network industries, which is your roads network, telecommunications, infrastructure, energy sections, water and sanitation areas, cannot be left to private participation, but the state must take responsibility for implementation of this. If we were to put more funds into those areas, we will be able to tackle the rate of unemployment, and as a result, we will then be able to make sure that our people are able to take care of themselves and also change the way in which the Reserve Bank functions. Its focus on just inflation and support of jobs in an unknown way, it's something else. We need them to focus on making job creation part of their priority, because job creation is an apex priority in our country.
Let me ask you this question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mapaila. In the interest of time, there's a particular question I want to get into, and I'm glad you've already touched on the multilateral institutions, whether it be the IMF or the World Bank. And the reason I'm drawing your attention to that is that not only do we as a country rely on these institutions for, should we say, economic advice, but we actually even take money from these institutions. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be talking to a chief economist at Alex Forbes, who wrote an opinion piece this weekend suggesting that South Africa's neutral position on the Russia-Ukraine conflict will compromise the country economically because we rely on the very West, or should I say Western countries, for financial aid, whether it be the direct investment that comes from these countries who are likely now to focus inward.
He's talking absolute nonsense. He's a bourgeois scholar. These are the people that have failed many African countries. We have had many other teachings and lessons. John Stiglitz himself, who advised Bill Clinton as an economic advisor, worked in the IMF and the World Bank environment, a professor, had ultimately agreed that his advices and the advices of these institutions on developing countries and Africa in particular have been ill-informed because they were devoid of scientific proof and scientific evidence on their success anywhere else. So we've been used as a guinea pig for Western ideas. And at the same time, the very same institutions have colonized us, have never wanted us to be developed. So it's absolutely incorrect. There's a book that I think that he must read of a South African, Malcolm Ray, who wrote a book called The Tyranny of Growth recently. And he actually mentions a lot of, there's a section in that book from Washington to Johannesburg, where he was talking about how the Washington Consensus Syndrome has been focusing on the African continent with regard, and in this case in South Africa, to structural adjustment reform or their methods of investment, which are not working for our people.
Mr.
So
Mapaila,
we need a change in our thoughts, not from bourgeois scholars.
Again, apologies for interrupting you. I'm completely out of time, but I can't resist the question. We know the South African Communist Party's roots, which go back to the days of the Soviet Union. Do you believe that the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, do you believe that Russia is the aggressor in this war?
No, the aggressor is NATO and the European Union. They've ran away from the agreements, the 2+4 agreement of 1991, wherein NATO had agreed with the unification of Germany from East Germany, which was a socialist, where the Soviet Union had actually deployed its army there, and other neighboring countries, that NATO will not expand to the Eastern European countries. The agreement is publicly known. It was signed in Moscow by the USA, Britain, Canada, Germany. The two Germans were called the two sides. And so when they betray this agreement and there's aggression and encircling of Russia security-wise, and it responds in this way, it cannot be the aggressor. The aggressor is the NATO, the European Union, and the United States of America. But I think it is time to turn away from these continuing atrocities, both of the Western imperialism worldwide and also to stop the war in Ukraine.
SACP's First Deputy Secretary, Mapaila, thank you very much for your time.